Explore your thoughts. Learn what you think you already know. We're taking you on a journey to the other side. Welcome, everyone, to another edition of The Other Side. With me today, we're jumping gears through this election cycle. We're moving on to the BESE election here in Avoyelles Parish. Our district is District 5. And we have with us in studio Mr. Lance Harris, running for that seat. How you doing, Mr. Lance?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
So, Mr. Lance, you are the incumbent right now for, is it District 25?
That's
As a
correct.
state representative.
That's correct.
You're also the owner of the Lebos.
That's correct.
And you're running for District 5 BESE. If you can go in, for those that don't know, being you're not from Avoyelles Parish, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been in the legislature. This is my 12th year I'm termed out, and I've been the majority leader of the House for 7 years of my tenure, and then I was chairman of the Education Committee these last few years, which is the House Education Committee, which has a whole lot to do with BESE, and the BESE board has a lot to do with setting the policies in education and those any law that pertains to education, either in elementary, high school, or college, comes through that committee. So I've been doing that for the last few years. I'm a businessman from Rapides Parish. Not only do I have the stores, I'm in the rodeo business. We got Milam Harris Rodeo Productions, which is a covered arena out at Hingston. And we do Woodside Cattle and Pecan Farms right there south of Ellick. You probably pass by it going to Marksville. So that's something I've been doing for about 22 years. So I've got my hands in all kind of things. So, but I want to run for BESE because I want to take this experience I've had over the last 12 years, and especially the last few years as education chairman, and apply it to the BESE board. The BESE board is kind of like over the elementary and secondary education in the state of Louisiana. And what that entails is they set all of your basic rules for a lot of the classes that the kids take, the standards that or the kids have to go through, and like social studies standards or social studies curriculum, all of that type of stuff is done through BESE. But another big thing that they do is they are the ones that set the budget for education. In our Constitution of the state of Louisiana, we have what's called a foundation program, where it's a calculation of how much money will be spent per school, per student. And the BESE board is the one responsible putting that together. And last year it was around $4.3 billion. So that's a very important part of being on the BESE board also, is having the budget, responsibility. So, and that's something I've been doing for all 12 years in the legislature. I've been on appropriations and really worked with the budget. But that's kind of the highlights of what the BESE board does. They also approve and disapprove your charter schools once that goes through the local process. And then, like tomorrow, they're taking on a rulemaking committee where they're trying to change the standards of the graduation standards. And that's just an example where they can actually set what the criteria is to get a high school diploma. And they do a rule, then the only thing that can change that would be legislative oversight of the governor. So it's pretty much the hierarchy of rule setting in our school systems, our elementary and secondary education system in the state.
So just to break it down a little bit further, the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, there's 8 districts there's 8 elected districts, and there's 3 appointed by the governor. Is
That's
that correct? So how does that work with the so do they appoint the superintendent of education for Louisiana?
Yes, they have ultimately they have the review process and the hiring of that Department of Education superintendent. Right now we have Cade Brumley, who's the Department of Education superintendent over Louisiana Department of Education. So that is a responsibility of BESE.
So he was elected by the board.
Yes, and approved by the board. Yes.
So you were the chairman of the House Education Committee. Is that
That's
correct?
correct.
So how intimate have you as far as dealing with BESE? Is that like a one-on-one? Everything goes through BESE, and they. So if I guess what I'm asking, if they want to try to make a change, that has to go through that committee, and you work hand in hand with them.
Yeah, and what happens is any legislation, let's say there's a law that affects education, that comes through the House and the Senate committee and ultimately goes to the floor. And then if it's approved by both houses, it's signed by the governor. And so throughout the process of being chairman of education, I've dealt with the superintendent of education on a lot of occasions. We've done some bills together, and then I've taken on some BESE bills that they needed in the past that might change the teacher background checks or whatever. That has to be done legislatively. So you've worked with BESE in that manner. When BESE makes a rule, the way the process works, like similar to what's happening tomorrow, once they approve a rule after public comment, they have all this, it's the APA process, so all the public gets to comment. They decide whether, yes, we're going to change this rule, or no, we're not. If they say yes, they send a summary over to the legislature. Once we get that summary, we have to wait 5 days. And if the legislature, one of the committees, either it could be the Senate or the House, does not like that rule, or they want to have an oversight hearing, they can call an oversight hearing within 90 days after that 5th day. So ultimately, the legislators can look at a BESE rule, they can approve it or disapprove it. If they disapprove that rule, then the last chance for it to become a rule is if the governor overrules the legislature. So it's similar to the way everything works
Right.
now.
It still has to go through the legislature.
Goes through the process. So we've done a lot of those, like the social study curriculum came through our House committee. We approved it with everybody thumbs up on it, and so that got approved. So it's been a whole lot of intimacy with the BESE board and with the Department of Education for me on the last 2 or 3 years because of my chairmanship. I'm also on some subcommittees of BESE itself. That we have to determine in one of the committees the computer technology courses that are going to be offered to our students in the upcoming years. I'm on that committee, also early learning standards committee. So it's been quite a bit of interplay with the BESE board already for my, as chairman of the education committee.
So I guess that's why that kind of ushered you into running for that seat as opposed to something else. Being you're termed out now, I guess if it's in your blood, you got to run for something. So
Well,
you kind of have the experience, I guess, already.
Yeah. No, I'll tell you what, I was ready to ride off into the sunset. And Miss Ellis, who was the BESE member for our district right now, decided not to run, which left an opening. And a lot of people called me and asked me would I run due to my experience and my ability to get everybody to work together to move things in a positive manner. And that's why I decided to jump in this race. So it was an opening, and here I am. And I want to take my experience and that skill set I've learned in the legislature and in business and being chairman of education and apply that to the BESE board so we can keep moving our educational system in Louisiana in a positive manner.
Yeah, for sure. I think everybody can agree with that.
Oh, yeah.
So, Mr. Harris, so you run and you have a lot of intimate knowledge into this. Do you see a specific area that would need improving? So like you have a specific platform on what you can do to better the education system of Louisiana?
Absolutely. Look, one of the first things we have to do is make sure that our kids are really proficient by the 3rd grade in both literacy and numeracy. If a kid gets to the 3rd grade and then they are socially promoted and they can't read on a 3rd grade level, that just sets them up for failure. I mean, the data is unreal about how a kid might be socially promoted all the way through the system and not be able to read. Well, by the time they get to high school, they're set up for failure. So it's critically important that we have our kids on a 3rd grade level as far as numeracy and literacy, that when they're in that 3rd grade and they're promoted to the 4th, that they have a good grasp on that. It sets the foundation that gives them the tools that they need to be successful in education and life and also in their family life, because that early age is critically important. So I want to continue those efforts that we've done in the legislature and working with BESE and others to make sure that that's done on a year in and year out basis and our kids are set up just perfectly with that foundation to give them the success they need through the higher grades in school. The other thing that we've got to concentrate on is the retention and recruitment of great teachers. We've kind of ignored that in the past, and we want, one of the things I want to see happen is we treat our teachers as the professionals they are. Look, we give them the tools they need to train our kids. We continue giving them the resources to be re-educated, and a lot of this AI and virtual education coming on board, it's all going to change a lot of things. So we give them the tools they need to continue to be professionals that they are, and give them a little more local control over what the kids are getting, and how they're getting it. So just let them be the professionals they are. And then to recruit and retain those teachers, we got to make sure that our payroll is right, our pay is right, and we have the tools in place as a state and as an employer to make sure they'll want to come work as a teacher and stay as a teacher in the state of Louisiana. That's critically important. Another thing that we got to do is we got to implement the workforce readiness programs into our public schools and our secondary schools. Look, I'd like to see kids in 8th grade start learning about if they're not going to go to college. They know it probably. They may want to learn to be a welder or be a car mechanic, whatever. We have to make sure those tools are in place for those kids to just kind of steer right on into some of these positions and be workforce ready upon graduation. And I think we've made some progress in that with our community colleges and some, but we've got to continue to really work hard on that, to where our kids not only may be wanting to go to college and take the test and do all that, the ACT to go to college, but they also have the capability and the option to choose a trade of some type, which in a lot of instances is a lot better than getting a college degree, and it's been proven over and over again. And I was on the economic board in Rapides, where we were founders of it. One of the studies said, if you get these kids workforce ready, even if they get an associate's degree or they're doing, some of these dual enrollment degrees, they are like 60 to 70% more likely to stay in their home area than as if you go off to college or whatever. So it's kind of a twofold remedies to some things. And then lastly, we've got to have a fair accounting system to where our schools are graded fairly and our students are graded fairly, and it's fair, and it's something pretty simplistic that our families can use to decide where they want to send their kids to school. That's simple. We've got some work to do on that because our value added model is a little bit, doesn't line up with some of the metrics right now. And so we don't get a real good, clear grading system. So there's some work on the accountability that has to take place.
All right. A couple of things to unpack from that. So the teachers' pay, is that subsidized by the state? Is that a state responsibility, or is that a local district?
It's a blend. It's a blend. For instance, in Rapides Parish, they've given out, I think it's $7,000 a year in one-time payments to their teachers. And then we, as a legislature and as a state, you continually raise that pay through the MFP. You can do it in the MFP, or you can do it outside the MFP, which is what happened last year in this last session we just went through. So it is a state responsibility to keep raising that pay, make sure we're at least at a Southern average, and that we're competitive with other states. I mean, I've heard story after story. Some of our parishes that are neighboring Mississippi or Texas are losing teachers to the other state.
Jumping the border.
Yeah, and they're jumping across. And for instance, if you've got a like Grant Parish next to Rapides, if Rapides is paying more than Grant, then you have a lot of movement. So
that happens here a lot too.
Yeah,
as well.
we have to look
Rapides.
at that, right? And we have to make sure that's a stable market. It's a labor market just like in business, and we've got to make sure that we're competitive everywhere on that.
And that would be a BESE responsibility, or that would be
when you set the MFP, it certainly is. I'll give you an example. Last year, the MFP, which is the foundation program, the budget was sent over to the legislature, and the way that works is the legislature can either vote yes or no. They can't change it. They either vote yes on it, and it goes to the governor or excuse me, it doesn't. If they vote yes, it's a resolution and it's in place in HB1. If they vote no, it goes back to BESE. And if there's not enough time left to redo a resolution or MFP, then it goes to last year's figure. So that's what happened in this previous legislative session. And if you remember, there was a lot of talk about the $2,000 pay raise for teachers. It's a one-time stipend, and it is.
Yeah.
Because we didn't approve the MFP. Now I put it out of. It came out of my committee. We sent it to the floor. The floor actually sent it to appropriations. It came out of appropriations, but leadership, for whatever reason, decided not to use the MFP formula. It had a permanent $2,000 a year raise in it for teachers. So yes, BESE sent that over to us with a raise in it. This was probably the 5th or 6th year that they've done that. So next year's MFP, I feel like will have a raise for teachers in it. If the money is there, it'll be sent to the legislature. They'll either say yes or no, and then they'll use it.
Right. And it can't be altered or anything by the legislature.
No.
Only approve or disapprove. This
That's
is completely orchestrated by BESE.
BESE and LDOE work together to put that together and send over to the legislature.
That's what I love about these podcasts. So informative. I'm learning so much doing all this, and I think everybody is too. Like I said, a lot of people don't know what a BESE is. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you're here really breaking these things down. But Mr. Harris, a few years back, around 2015, I think maybe 2016, they started with the Common Core thing, and a lot of people stood up kind of against it, and a lot of it entails, for instance, no more cursive writing, and then the math is a different way of doing math, and a few other things that was really frowned upon. Shortly after that, my kids ended up going to a different school, a charter school, and that wasn't implemented there. What's the current, I guess, status of that with Common Core? Are we into that, or is it just modified or changed?
Well, I would say it's modified and changed. If you remember back in 2015-16, I, along with about 3 other guys in the legislature, took on the fight for Common Core. And it was actually my bill that in last year's agenda that they wanted to use as a compromise. So we were able to strike a compromise with the Department of Education at the time and BESE on Common Core. So they redid the rule and had for families to show up and give their input about what they didn't like about Common Core and all of that. So it went through that process. So some of it was still there. Some of it was taken out or slowed down. And it's still, there's some there, but it has changed over the years. For instance, we've got a new social studies curriculum that's totally different than what Common Core would have sent down. It was actually developed by our Department of Education with groups around the state. So there's been some changes. And look, that brings me to a good point. You've got to have people on this BESE board. Unfortunately, in the United States of America today, there's people that think they know better than you do as a parent what should go into your child's head in education. And we need people on the BESE board that says, wait a minute, you don't, hands off the kids. That's the parent's responsibility. So we've got to make sure that you're very diligent on a lot of this, for lack of a better word, a lot of these woke ideas and ideologies coming down are not portrayed in our classroom. So we've done a lot of that on the House Education Committee, and that's going to be a lot of BESE's responsibility coming up in the future too.
Yeah. I hadn't heard a lot about Common Core, a lot of complaints, and from what I kind of gathered, like you said, it was either changed or thrown out or whatever, because I hadn't seen a lot. But back in 2016, when it first unraveled, my kids were going to the public school, and boy, I mean, it was a whole new, complete set of ideas and no cursive writing, and the math was just bizarre.
Eureka math, they call it.
Yeah, that's right, the Eureka math. So we kind of, myself and others, we kind of put a little thing together, went to school board meetings and stuff, kind of protesting it, or not protesting it, but, speaking out against it. And I had produced a video. A video is very poorly produced with the technology of 2016 versus now with my little producer here, Emily. Yeah. But the research was phenomenal. If anybody checks that out, I think it's called just search my name, Lance Dozal. This was before the podcast. Lance Dozal, everything you need to know about Common Core, something like that, you'll find it. Great information, just not the best quality. But anyways, let's see, Mr. Lance. Is there anything else that we're leaving out that you would need to add?
Well, just that there's a lot of work to do on the BESE coming up. We're going to have a new governor. Most likely, I'd say 99% chance that governor's going to be a Republican. You're going to have a third of the legislature is new, and you're going to have at least 8 new members on the BESE board, at least. So this is the perfect opportunity for us to get some things right when it comes to education in the state of Louisiana. And so I want to get on that board so I can use my experience to make sure that we don't take time to learn anything about the educational system. We already know it, been engrossed in it for the last 12 years, and we're able to get right in and go to work with this new governor and this new legislature. It's a golden opportunity for us. I
It
feel
seemed like
very
it's
good.
it seemed like it's a clean slate. New
Yeah.
governor, new 8 new best. Well, is that 8? That's counting the 3 that the governor will be able to elect.
That's counting to 3. So there's 5 new
5,
ones that's elected probably.
right?
Yeah, at least.
And then 3 leftovers from they're just not that race.
They're
just yet.
they're re-upping. So, look, man, I tell you, the other thing that we've got to do, I think, in state of Louisiana, and it's critical for the BESE board. All we hear about is, or have in the past, oh, Louisiana's at the bottom, Louisiana this and the other. It's a negative culture. We need to change it to a positive culture. Look, there's some
Absolutely.
great things happening in Louisiana right now. We're actually 42nd in the nation. When I got elected 12 years ago, we were 49th. We were fighting for 50th with Mississippi.
Is that an education?
That's in education. So we're now at 42nd. Just this year, we've been recognized because we've had the number 1 in the nation for 4th grade reading improvement over our school system. You hear about positive things happening in Rapides Parish all the time. Our 3rd graders are starting to read on grade level. We're having massive improvement there. There's some great things happening because we got great teachers, we got great school systems, and great superintendents. And overall, we got great students that are capable of learning. We just have to get out of this culture that everybody has heard we're last in that education. We're not. We're coming up the ladder, but we've got to push harder and get it up faster for our kids. And I'd like to see the culture change where we talk positively about the educational system in Louisiana, because we have some really good things happening.
Yeah, for sure. The standardized testing. What is the Iowa test or
The LEAP test.
the leap test?
Right.
Is that 50 states that takes that particular test? Or is that a regional thing, or is that only Louisiana?
Our LEAP test is kind of produced for Louisiana. There's several other states that take a standardized test. But look, that's something we got to look at because, and that goes into the accountability piece I was talking about.
Yeah, how do we compare if it's only for Louisiana, how we compare ours with other states to see where we are?
Right. And you'll hear a lot. If I'm fortunate enough to get on BESE, you're going to hear some about what we call through testing, where we let the teachers be professionals. They test the kid first part of the year. They test them throughout the year, and then they test them at the end of the year, and they see how that one individual child improved. The standardized test kind of is a one size fits all. And sometimes it's a little quirky how it bakes into the accountability system, because some kids don't do well on a standardized test. You may leave some out, some do better. But we may have to look at that, and we will look at it, because Ascension Parish does through testing right now. It's very successful with it.
You said 3 testing?
Through testing.
Oh, through testing.
Through testing. So what that means is you test that child throughout the year, and you see how he was the first year, how he was at the end of the year, and the teachers are basically held accountable for that. And in most instances, the teachers will learn what that kid needs, where their weaknesses are, and the children improve. There'll be some discussion about that, but we have to look at the LEAP test. There's no question about it. It's been in effect now, I think at least 20 or 30 years. I mean, I looked at some of the old accountability laws. They were written in the 70s.
Right.
Look, this is 2023. We got to get in this century on some of this. So,
Getting the century.
we're already talking about it. BESE has held meetings every month, getting ready for the new BESE board, which I've attended either via Zoom or in person. To where we're talking about the accountability with consultants all over the country to find out what we need to do to improve it. to make it simpler, which is easy to understand for the parents, and make it family friendly. It's very simple. Right now, it's so convoluted, nobody really understands it but the people that put it together. We need something that people can actually use to make good choices for their kids. And that's where we need to go with the accountability. And that LEAP test is a big part of it.
Yeah. And the through testing, if they test them a couple of times, 2 or 3 times throughout the year, I guess it's easier for the teacher to hone in on that individual kid's weakness instead of a one size fits all, and kind of focus on each individual child.
Right. And I think your curriculum would be more aligned.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the LEAP test you may be having to teach to the LEAP test, but this way you have the curriculum you're teaching that child through and then testing them on the same thing all the way through the end of the year. So there'll be a discussion about that. I'm not saying that's the first thing that's going to happen, but those are the kind of discussions that we have to have as a BESE. Right. And we have to be brave enough to get up there and talk about some of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's at least a good launch pad, Kickstarter, just something to chew on and see what sticks,
Right.
So your District 5, it's a pretty large district.
It's huge.
Can you pull it
19
up,
parishes.
19. Some of the other ones are I think it was 8. District 8 is kind of small, but so everything in the blue is District 5, and there we are at the bottom of Oz and Rapides Parish.
Right.
So in case y'all were wondering how big of a deal BESE is, people don't realize how big of a deal this is. If you were currently a state representative, that's a pretty big deal. But there's 64 of y'all, right?
Right. Oh, there's 105 in the
that's right,
House.
because it's and in the Senate it's
39
in the Senate. Mm-hmm. So there's only 8 of BESE members, right?
That are elected, right?
That are elected,
and
so
then 3 at large. And it's 19 parish area, all the way from Claiborne Parish, Arkansas, all the way down to Avoyelles. Yeah. Now you want to get a shot, which was fun. 2 or 3 weekends ago, I was here in Avoyelles with your brother, as a matter of fact, and stopped by, and then we went to the church fair and the thing down in Marksville. You see the difference between Avoyelles Parish and Ouachita. It's a lot of difference.
Shock.
It is. And
you can go this way here on 107, cross the Red River, and that changes from there to here. That's 3 miles down the road.
That's it. And but look, it's a good. It's a 19 parishes. There's 600,000 people in that population set. Probably about 235,000 registered voters. So it's a lot, and a lot of territory to cover, and it's very important. I mean, this is incredibly important to the state of Louisiana to get the right people on BESE because of the decisions that they make. They could affect your kids' education from first grade all the way through 12th grade, and if it's the wrong decision, it's hard to change that ship.
Yeah, absolutely. Once that ship done sailed, and then it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks.
That's right.
Get them early. So, and you can't go around shaking 600,000 hands. So hopefully the podcast is a great way to get the information out that can be shared and everything.
Right.
So, Representative Harris, why should here people in the Avoyelles Parish vote for you?
Well, it's simple. My experience, I've been doing this 12 years, and I've got a reputation of working with people and be able to get things done. As chairman of education, you got to put the people in the room, and you got to come out of the room with a solution for the kids. That's what's important. Take the politics out of it, and you're looking for solutions for our kids. And so I've got the experience to do that. I've been doing that. And by the way, Darrell Desautels, Senator Cloud, all the senators and the reps in the district have endorsed my campaign because they know how I work and they know how we can get things done and move that educational system in the right direction. So that's why I think I'm the best candidate. I've got the experience, and I don't have to learn anything. I'm maybe some nuances, but I've been involved in this education thing since day one of my tenure in the legislature.
Yeah, I'm sure there's always a little something to learn once you're in the seat, but you already have a jump start from you've been tied to that with your previous experience in the legislature,
right? Because that's $4.3 billion a year that we're spending on education. It's a huge part of our government, and we don't have time for somebody to try to learn on the job.
That's right. Yeah. So what's your number on the ballot?
Oh man, you asked me one. I think it's 43. Number
43?
43, pretty sure.
Or just look for Lance Harris.
Yeah,
That
that's it.
number.
It's easy.
Right. Well, I sure appreciate you coming out to the program. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
That's it. I appreciate you having me, and I'd ask everybody for your vote. I would very much be honored to have your vote and represent you on the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, 5th District.
Okay. And just as a program note, the way I've been doing the podcast, I interview everyone from that particular district, and then I release the videos. I had contacted your opponent. He has never contacted me back, and we just don't have any more time left. So you agreed to come on, so we did it. So he was contacted. Everybody knows how I do the podcast and everything. So, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Representative Mr. Lance Harris running for BESE District 5. Hope everyone gets out and votes on October the 14th. And if you can, share this podcast. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's important to subscribe to my YouTube channel and not just on Facebook, because we do have reason to believe the word doesn't get out as much on Facebook. That's grounds for a whole nother podcast. But if you can just subscribe to YouTube, you won't miss anything. You're going to get a lot more great content like this. So, folks, thanks for trekking along with us here. This is another edition of The Other Side.
I wanna be